Have you ever wanted to know everything that there is to know about Anytype? Well, if so, you're in luck. This video represents all of my knowledge about the app Anytype, and I've put it all together in one pretty extensively long video. So if you're looking to learn something new, if you want to get started with Anytype, or if you're looking for something very specific, you've come to the right place. There'll be timestamps in the video, you can probably tell that by now, but otherwise I suggest you just start from the beginning because that's going to make sure we cover all of the bases. So pull up Anytype, download it if you haven't already, sit back, get ready to work because we're just going to dive right in. Now, if you just downloaded Anytype off the internet, you won't be greeted with a screen like this because you'll probably just get put into a fresh new vault. But if you used Anytype in the past, you probably have got some old work in there that you'd rather just ignore for the time being and just start with a new vault, a clean slate. So I'm just going to show you how to do that real quick so we can all get started on the same page. Over here, you've got all the different vaults that you currently own. You've got your gallery, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then you've got this Create New button. Now, if you're not seeing this, it's probably because up here in the widget options, where you can click this to turn your entire sidebar on and off, in here there's an option for only widgets, and sometimes this is turned on by default. And when this is turned on, you can just see the widgets of your workspace, but not all of your actual spaces on the side. So to fix this, just be sure to right-click on this, make sure that Spaces and Widgets is selected, and then you'll see all these spaces. So let's go here to the Create New button. We're going to call this the Demo Vault, Create from Scratch, and there we go. We've got our welcome message. This is probably what you'll see if you install Anytype for the first time, and from here, we're good to go. Now, this first page we see is actually a pretty good playground to get familiar with some of the very basics of editing in Anytype. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is go over some of the settings and view features that I have, just to make sure that if I start doing something that looks confusing on your screen or it doesn't work the same way, we can all get on the same page. So down here, I'm going to click on the Settings button. On Mac, you can also hit Command, comma to bring this up, and on Windows, it's probably something similar, whatever you Windows people use. And of course, it's first going to show you all of your personal information. I might blur some of this out, but in reality, I think the Anytype identity is just used on the forums if you want to request a special feature or something. Either way, I'll just keep it private just to be safe. Over here in Preferences, you've got your spell check and languages. I have the Show Quick Capture menu on click. Now, that might not make a lot of sense now, but I would set it to click and it'll be easier to follow through, and I'll explain at the end what it does if you want to change it back. But I suggest keeping it on click. Link to object style I like to have on card. Open objects in full screen I have turned off. Automatically show and hide the sidebar I have turned off. Sidebar mode, it's currently on Spaces and Widgets. We just selected that so we could get over here. Remember, we right click on that little icon up here. But I'm going to now turn this to only widgets just so we can have a very clean view of what we're working on. We're not going to be hopping around the spaces very much throughout this tutorial. Show Anytype in System Tray. Frankly, I don't know what this does. I'm not going to mess with it. I like the date settings. I like all of that. I'm going to leave that as it is. Right now, over in color mode, we have two options, light and dark, and then we can sync it to our system if we want. Dark mode can be really nice because a lot of the colors in Anytype really pop when you have it in dark mode, but I'll leave it in light mode just to have it consistent for most of this video. You've got your pin code to lock certain notes. We're not going to look at that because that's private. Spaces, data management, all of this is also a little more personal. So these are the two that really matter for the purposes of this tutorial. Clicking anywhere else will exit us out of the settings menu, and now we're ready to start playing around with the text editing features of Anytype. So now we have our workspace, and it's time to start building things in it. And before we get to filling it all out with complex notes, let's just get familiar with some of the basics of making different pages in Anytype. So on this welcome page, which is a pretty good place to play around, you can read it if you want. I'm going to highlight it all, and I'm going to wipe it, and it'll just leave us with the title. I'm just going to bring that down to welcome. And now what do we have? We've got our flying saucer and our welcome. This is the title of the note, and you can see that up here where it will show you the title and the icon. Now, I don't really feel like the icon makes a lot of sense, so I'm going to click that guy. And over here, I'm just going to start by hitting remove, and then I'll show you how to add it, because every time you make something new in Anytype, it's not going to start with an emoji. So if you go up here, anywhere on the title or above, if you hover up here, it'll show you icon, cover, and layout. Let's start with the icon. This is where you can choose an emoji, so this is where our flying saucer is. There's also, quite frankly, any emoji you could possibly want in here, and then you also have an option for the library and upload. So upload is where you could put your own icons here. If you wanted to pull all of your cute photos from Notion and put them as your headings at your pages, you could do that. If you wanted to take selfies, I guess you could put those here too. That would be a little odd, but this allows you to use custom icons instead of emojis. The library will show you all of the images that exist in your vault. So let's say you've been using it for a while, you've got a lot of different icons in there. This will just show you all of your pre-existing icons, so instead of uploading them a second or third time, you can just go here and find them, assuming of course that they exist. In this case, there's nothing here because we haven't done anything yet, so we'll just stick to emojis for now. We'll hit the house, and boom, there we go. Here's the emoji, here's the title. What more could you want? Well, what about a nice background? If you click cover, you get all of these beautiful colors that they've chosen, including, I'm colorblind, but light blue, almost a pink to like a peach color. I don't like these gradients very much, so what we can also do with them, obviously if we click this we can remove it. You can also click this and go to Unsplash. And Unsplash is just a website where photographers and image designers can upload their own work. Sometimes they can get paid for it, but this will allow you to search through all of the free Unsplash pictures. I'm just going to quickly use this one as an example. Please don't copyright sue me. It has your credentials down here if you like this. This is his work, not mine. Please go follow him, what have you. Okay. Now, when we have a custom image uploaded here, we can click on download if we really like it, and reposition, and this will allow us to zoom it in and out. It'll allow us to move it up and down, and presumably left to right, we can move it around, but it's going to keep it at its ideal width, and then we can just move it up and down. So let's say we like it there, then you can click save, and now we have our cover. You can also, of course, just like the emojis, upload your own. So now our library is being populated with this one because it's something that's been added to our vault because we just put it on this page. But we can also upload our own image, and then it would also show up in the library. But kind of see how this works with the library. Now that we've brought this image into the vault, it's going to show up in the library right here. So just to make sure I don't get sued by Merrick Pewicki, good photo, man, but I'm just going to set it to this kind of off-white for now, and we're going to leave it like that. Okay. This third button over here, layout, has a couple of different options, and sometimes this can be confusing, so I really want to try to go through this slowly. The layout type determines how all of this, what's called front matter, works. The front matter is like the background image here, the emoji, and the title text. So this text down here is just, it's never going to change. It's always going to stay in its place no matter what we do with these four options. So the first option that we're on is basic, and that has the wallpaper, it has your icon right here, and it has your title right here. Pretty simple. Now if we go down to profile, what you'll notice is that the title stays the same, and the wallpaper stays the same, but our emoji, it's just gone. And now all we have is the ability to upload an image to this circle-shaped image icon. This is for making profiles or, contact information. Ideally, you're supposed to put a picture of your buddy here, your buddy Frank, he's going to go here, and then you would put all of his information in this note. It just changes the outline, so instead of having an emoji, it just looks for an image. The third option here is action, which gets rid of the emoji entirely and instead gives us this little checkbox. And this can be used for tasks or projects, and you'll notice that when you click this, it turns green, and it turns green in the title of the note as well. So similarly to how, for example, back on basic, our emoji would show up next to the name, now this checkbox kind of becomes our emoji. It's next to the name of the note, and this stores as a status of this page. So later on, when we get to more complex things like sets and collections, we can specifically filter for all of our things in Anytype that have the checkbox checked, and then this would be one of them. So action is really useful for things that you just want to have a toggle, have I done this, haven't I done this, actions or tasks, if you will. And finally, you have note. Now pay attention to what just happened here. We no longer have a title. In fact, this welcome and this text are put together in the title of the note right here. Now, why did this happen? Well, because the note layout doesn't have a title. It also doesn't have a wallpaper or an icon. The note layout is solely for large blocks of text or even small blocks of text where it makes more sense to just have the context of the note without the actual title. So, for example, if you just had a quote, you wouldn't really want to put the quote as the title and then repeat the quote in the body of the note, but you also wouldn't want to have the quote as the title and then just have the citation as the body of the note, but then you also wouldn't want to have like a summary of the quote as the title and then the actual quote in the note. So this way, if you put your quote here, it's just going to treat that as the title. It doesn't care what new lines you have, so For example, if I go back to basic, welcome is the title, and text is not part of the title because there's a difference here. But in Note, there just is not that difference. And so this can be useful if you just have little notes you want to jot down and you don't want to worry how to title them. Note is the layout for you. But let's stick with basic for now because, frankly, this is what we're going to be using 90% of the time in Anytype. The bottom two options here, I actually did lie. This text, even though it didn't move around when we changed it to action or to note, really, it is going to change if we change the layout width. And this is just to make your page wider or smaller. I like to keep mine around 50%. I feel like that's kind of a chill width to have. And then finally, the align. Now, to be clear, this align option, this does not change the body of your note. It doesn't change any of your text. It's going to change the title and the emoji. So I can put that in the center if you want it to be nice and clean, and I can put that to the right if you want it to be over there for some reason. And of course you can justify it, which in reality does nothing right now. So left, right, and center are mainly going to be the options that you're using, but remember, all of these options here, the layout type and the alignment and the width, this just really affects the front matter. This little text down here, it's not going to be changed. Even if I align the title to the right, everything that I add is still going to be here on the left. So that's how you can kind of customize the headings of your notes, the front matter, if you will, to make something that's pretty, to make something that you enjoy looking at. So now let's get into some of the options for text editing itself. Now, there's a couple ways to go about editing text in Anytype, and when you make a new line, it's going to give you the option to type text or slash for commands. And even though we could type the slash and achieve basically all of the text formatting that we want right here, there's also a lot of other complicated things that I don't really want to deal with right now, and we'll get to these later. So for the purposes of this segment, instead of using the slash menu, all that we're going to be using is clicking. We're just going to be having our text here, and then these three dots on the side are going to serve all of our purposes. So first and foremost, let's put some extra text in here. Put in extra, put in my name, and we'll put in USA. Big. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate with this is just how to move text around. You'll see as we kind of hover around here, this orange line will appear, and we can kind of highlight the three gray dots, or if we hover over this plus button, that orange line will show up. And this just shows you where you would be inserting new lines of text. So let's say I want to put one right here. I would just kind of move so the little plus button will follow my mouse, and boom, now here's a new line of text. It automatically opens the slash menu, but if you don't want to deal with that, you can just click somewhere else and then type new text or what have you. So the little plus button will just put text wherever you want it. Now, before we get to formatting the specific text, we can also move the text around by grabbing the three gray dots on the side. So let's move the USA over next to my name. Boom, there you go. Now, here's something interesting to pay attention to. Obviously, we can keep doing this if we really want to, and that's all fine and dandy, and we can keep squishing it out here if we want. But if you want to put text under specific ones of these headings, let's say we want to put something under USA, this text isn't going to cut it. And the way you're going to know this is by looking at where the highlight is. Because this highlight stretches all across the screen, that means that there's these three pieces of text, and then underneath them are these two pieces of text. If you want to set this under, for example, Piano Mac Power, you would have to drag it so that the line is only under Piano Mac Power right here, instead of the line going all the way across. When it goes all the way across, it will stretch across all of this text. So for example, if I want to put this under USA, and I have it down here, it's not going to do it. It's just going to keep setting it right here and aligning it to the right. But if I get that line to be right underneath the block that I want, boop, right there, now it's going to fit in there. And see where the blue is highlighting? That's how you can know exactly where your text is and how far it's going to stretch. Another thing you can do if you want to make easy hierarchies is just drag a piece of text, make sure it highlights another piece of text, or another block as they're called, and just pop it right there. And now you get it in a hierarchy. And so you can keep doing this if you really want to, and really make a lot of indents. I'm going to just undo all of that to make it simple. And of course, we can move text around up and down, and basically any way we want. So grabbing these little bars, that'll allow us to format our pages however we like. And if you want more space here, you can just put your mouse right on this gray bar that it shows up, and you can really customize it if you want your text to look like this. Okay, that's enough playing with that. Let's get into some editing. I'm going to just edit the USA because I'm a true American patriot. So if we click on these three dots right here, we're going to have a lot of different actions. We can delete this block. We can duplicate this block, which does exactly what we want. Who wouldn't want more of the USA? We can move it somewhere else. So if we have a different page or a different location in our vault, we can just move it there. We can turn it into an object, which again gets into more complicated Anytype features. So we'll figure that out later. We can clear the style, but there is no style. So let's get rid of these and let's talk about those styles. The first thing we can do is change the text style, and you've got a couple of options. We can make it into a title or, a heading, that sort of thing. We can make it into a highlight, which just puts this black bar here, and is really nice for quotes or for kind of like a thesis or a sub-thesis of a different section. And then we can also use a callout. Callouts are pretty fun because you can click on the little light bulb here, and here you can also upload your own emoji or more images. So just like you can make a custom image for your homepage, you can also make a custom image for your callout if you'd rather that. I can put that Unsplash image right there if I want. I can put a cowboy there. I can do whatever I want in this little callout. And let's clear that style, and let's go down to the bottom options here. There's also a checkbox, which functions similar to that action layout. There's just a checkbox, and you check it, and it grays out the text. There is a bulleted list, which if you press enter, here's a new entry, and it functions exactly as you'd expect it to. There is a numbered list, again, similar to a bulleted list, and then there's also a toggle. And toggles are pretty handy because you can put things down here and, hide them with the toggle. So that's all fine and dandy. The other options that we have here, if you click on this, are the alignment. So here's where we can align our text to the center or to the right if you want. Similar to how we could align the front matter with that option, we can also align the text with that option. And then of course we can change the color of the text, and we can change the color behind the text. So if you really want everything to be in pink text with a, teal background, you can do that, or you can just leave it as default like most normal people, but it's up to you. So those are all the basic text editing options in Anytype. And there's a lot more different things you can add to your notes, like tables of contents. But before we get into that, I want to go over some of the fundamental ideas and concepts of Anytype, because we're going to start using the / command. And that is going to acquaint us, whether we want it or not, with all of the different features of Anytype. So before we get to using that / command, we're going to have to understand what we're looking at before we can start using it. So that's the next section. One of the weaknesses with Anytype is that the terminology is really confusing. So I'm going to do my best to go slowly and to try to be very explicit about what I'm talking about, but I do apologize. I've tried this in so many videos and it's always really difficult to get it across. But just for simplicity, I'm also going to grab this right here and make our sidebar really big because we're going to start using it real soon here. Okay, Anytype functions off of an object-based system. What this means is that everything in Anytype is an object. You've probably seen this all objects piece of your widgets over here. And if we click on this, you can see there's a lot of different categories. There's pages, there's lists, there's media, bookmarks, files. These are all different categorizations of objects. But the best way to explain objects to you is to go over here to this types section. Anytype stores everything within a workspace by its object type. So it comes with some defaults like what we see here, but we can also make our own custom types. What we're editing right now is a page type, and we can see this if we click on page right here. Our welcome page is right down here. But there's a lot of other object types in Anytype by default. There's the file, which is where if I upload a PDF, it will be categorized as a file type. There is a space member, which is where I am, and it's where it stores all the information about me. There is videos, there's images, but the beautiful thing about Anytype is that you are not stuck with just the ones that exist. You can make your own as well. So for example, I can go through my entire Anytype experience only using pages. I can make pages like my welcome page, and I can keep adding on more and more pages. But eventually, I might want to branch out. I might want to say, well, I want all of my pages, but only the pages that are about books. And sure, you could just find that manually if you really want to, or you could go and make a new object type in Anytype specifically for books. And then instead of looking for pages that are about books, you could just go and search for all of your book object types. So the way you store information in Anytype is dependent upon what type of object you choose that to be. Hopefully that makes sense. So for example, images. Now, some object types in Anytype, like this is kind of a bad example because some of them are set in stone, and you can see that up here with this lock, system. So you can never really make something similar to image because this is reading like the file format and all these complex things that we can't control. But for example, project, this is not a system relation, so you can delete this if you want to. This looks very similar on the surface to a page. It's got the basic layout, but they're categorized as two different things. So if I wanted to start working on my deck, for example, I might make a new project rather than a new page, and I would store all of my information in here. That way, if I look up all of my projects, I can see them all at a glance without having to look for all of my pages that are projects, if that makes sense. Okay, now, hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Maybe that was a little long-winded, but I want to get that very clear because it's about to get even more complicated. The reason why there's different object types and why that matters is because every object has a certain amount of relations. Relations, think of them kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. They're just data that you put in to match certain queries. Here's what all of the relations in original Anytype are. Now, a lot of these you can actually delete. The lyrics, we don't care about that. That is for, I believe, the video or audio. Oh, the audio, of course, that makes sense. This is something that Anytype has by default, but we don't really care about the lyrics. But regardless, relations are like this kind of information. They're designed to be descriptors of the objects that you have. So obviously audio, you have the album, the artist, the track number, all of this information about it. For a page, you just have the description and the tag lets you just categorize it if you want to. For a project, they've added a couple more, so there's some associated tasks if you want to bring tasks along. So relations are just ways that you can associate bits of information with your object. So going back to that book example, if I made a new type for books, I might have a relation that says author or a relation that says number of pages. And that's just a way for me to store information about my object in a data sense. So that way I can search it, I can manipulate it pretty easily without just, making a page and then starting to fill out, this book has 12 pages, short book, but whatever the case may be. Instead of doing something like this, I can fill out all this information. So that is the bread and butter of Anytype. You make your information into a specific object, and then you choose relations to modify to it. So for example, if I was taking notes for my college class, I would make a college note object, and then I might put relations in there as to the date, when did I take this note, the professor who was giving the lecture, that sort of thing. That's how we work in Anytype, and that's where the true power of Anytype comes from. All right. Hopefully that made some amount of sense. I think it might help a little more if there's still some confusion just to start making a new object, and hopefully that'll kind of let the relations and the object types sink in and give you a better understanding of them. So let's start with this book example that we've been using. We'll go over here to the new button, we'll click on this, we'll call this new type book. We'll click somewhere so it saves, and now we can full screen it and take a look at it, and I'm going to squish this over to the side for now. There we go. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, first and foremost, similar to the page or anything else, we can set an icon, and we'll just use a book. That'll make it look a little more cozy here. And now on the sidebar, it's got a nice little icon right here instead of, for example, if I remove that, it's just going to look like a puzzle piece, and that's not very nice. Okay. Now the rest of this is a little more complicated. You've got a create button where we can create a new object or a set of objects. We'll talk about sets in a little bit. So this is where if you really wanted to, you could create a new book from here. You've got some templates. This one that's blank is the default. You've got the recommended layout, the relations, and then all of the objects of that type. So for example, if we go back to page, our welcome page is right here. If we go to book, well, we have no books, which is really sad. Everybody should have at least one book. So what are we going to do? Well, let's start with these relations right now. We have the description, and that can be kind of handy. The description of the book, that's okay. It's text, so we can put text in there. Let's add the number of pages. We'll click on add relation. Here's all of the existing relations that we have, except, you don't care about the focal ratio of a book. That doesn't make any sense. We'll just call this number of pages. And that doesn't exist yet, so it'll just say to create a new one, and I will. And now we can select the relation type. So let me just walk you through this pretty quickly. Object allows you to link to another object type. So for example, if I clicked on this, then I could set the number of pages to link to our welcome page. Obviously that doesn't make any sense, but let's say, for example, I wanted to link to a task. Let's say this was, what do I need to do with this book? Then I could make a new task object that says sell the book, and then I could link to it using this. So this lets us choose another object, something else in our vault, as the data that we're inserting into the book. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Text, we can just say whatever we want here. It's text. Number is what we want, but let's look at some of the other ones. Select gives you multiple options to select from. So it kind of like how we're choosing one of these right now, it'll give you a list of options that you can curate and add more to. So for example, we'll probably also add a status to the book, as are we going to read it? Is it being read right now? Or have we finished it? And that would be a select. Multi-select is similar to select, but you can choose multiple options. But you can choose multiple options at once. So for example, if you had the format of the book, you could have digital, and then you also could buy the paperback and the hardcover if you really like the book. The date is pretty obvious. You just choose a date on the calendar. File and media allows you to link specifically to just like a PDF or an image. So if you want to, let's say you have a copy of the ebook and you have it on your Google Drive, you could put a link to it here. A checkbox is very straightforward. It's just a checkbox. A URL will look for links, and if you click on it, it will automatically open it like a URL. Same with an email address, it'll just automatically make a new email at that address, and then a phone number, it'll try to call the phone or like open it in FaceTime or what have you. So that's what all of these options are. Let's just sit with number for now, and we'll hit create. Here's our number of pages relation. It says it's been created, and it puts it right here. Let's add a couple more. We'll create reading status, and this is where we'll use that select option. We'll hit create on that, and then we'll create book format. We'll go to the multi-select and create that. Okay, here's all of our relations. So when we make a new book, ideally all of these should show up, right? Well, we kind of have to work with that. If we go up here to create, just slap that right there and hit new object, this is what we're looking at. It doesn't give us a lot of that information, does it? So let's give it a name. We'll call it Flight to Eris. Very good book. Everybody should read this book. Now, it looks a lot like that welcome page that we were editing, but it's slightly different. Of course, we can add an icon. We'll choose a plane. And that isn't quite accurate, but we'll go with it. You can change the cover and the layout, but this isn't really what we're concerned with right now. What we're concerned with is these two guys down here, book and tag. So this wasn't showing up on the welcome page, which honestly I think is a bit of a mercy because otherwise you get thrown into the deep end really quickly. This just shows you the object type. So like we were talking about, this is an object type of book. We can change it to a page if you want, and then back to a book, and it's not going to do a lot right now. But ideally you don't mess with this a lot because, for example, if I change this to like a task, everything is going to get messed up, and you don't really want to deal with that. Let's go back to a book. Okay, we're safe. So we can also open the type, which will take us back to book, which is where we were. Let's go back to this. And then we can create a set. And again, we'll get to sets in a little bit. They're pretty complicated. And then we've also got this option for a tag. Now, I don't like this option because tag is global, meaning that this tag, if I set this to, let's say, it's a good book. Now, if I go back to pages, I look at my welcome page. Well, it's not actually here, but just humor me for a second. I'll explain this briefly. If I open the tags here, I can see that option here. So I can say that my welcome page is a good book, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I don't like using tags very much, but you're welcome to if you like. That's what the tag does. So let's get rid of this. We'll delete this option. Oh, yeah, delete it. I don't care. Okay. So we could put all of our information in here, that it's a good book. Everyone should read. But this isn't really showing off all that information. Where's all that data? The number of pages, the status, that sort of thing. And that's up here. I kind of teased it a little bit, and it took me a while to find this the first time I used it, so hopefully you'll get used to using this a lot. These little triangles here, these are our relations. Let's click that and see what we have. We've got featured relations and from type book. Now, featured relations are most of the time something that's locked, so we can't get rid of all of the backlinks. We have to keep backlinks, and that's just if we link this to a different page, it'll show up here. And the object type, we can't remove the object type from this, and then it would cease to exist in our Anytype workspace. Now, we've also got the tag, and you'll notice in this featured relations section that the tag is up here. You'll also notice that featured relations have this star next to them, and this is what determines whether they show up on this little section right underneath the title. Backlinks aren't showing up because none exist, but the tag is still there as an option for us to click on. I don't like the tag. I'm going to unstar it, and it's gone. Perfect. Now it says in this object, so yeah, the tag applies to this object, and then from the type of book, and these are all right here. So let's start tagging these. We'll put the book format up there, we'll put the reading status up there, and then I'm going to drag this number of pages using those 3 dots on the side, just boop, right down there. And it's indented for some reason because I highlighted a blank section, so of course it's going to indent, and there we go. Now we're fine. So now what we have is these 2 relations up here at the top, and then the number of pages is now inside of the note. So I can play around with this. I can move this like text. I can do a lot of what I can change the background. I can do whatever I want to this within reason. These guys are stuck up here. I can't move them. I can't do anything to them. I can click on them and I can fill them in. So the book format, I read this in hardback, but I also have a paperback of it. So you see how that multi-select works? We can choose 2 of these at once, or more if we want. But the reading status, let's say I originally bought it and I needed to read it, so unread. But now I started reading it, and now it's read. And then, boom. So we have these 3 options, but we can only choose one at a time, and that's the difference between the select and multi-select options. Obviously, I finished reading this, so it's going to sit there. When a relation is a multi-select, you can choose multiple. When it's a singular select, you can choose 1. Hopefully that makes sense. I just want to hammer that in because, I don't know, just want to make sure about that. Number of pages, I think it was around 400, so we'll just say that for now. And there we go. Now all of this information is filled out, and if we click on the relations, all the information is over here as well. The number of pages, 400, the object type is book, it's a hardback, paperback, and I've read it. So all of this information is now filled out through this node. And that's how relations work. They're basically ways to insert data instead of just saying there are, 400 pages in the book, etc., etc. That would be a pain to do, and this way you can just easily fill in the information and have it displayed really nice and pretty up here at the top. Now, we run into an issue the next time we create another book. Let's call this one, Confessions. Well, where did all of our hard work go? We moved these relations around, we got rid of the tag, we put the other ones up here, and that's kind of a pain because, now we have to do it from scratch again. Luckily, we don't have to, and that's how these templates come into play. So let's get rid of Confessions for now. It'll come back. We'll click on a new template button. Boom, right here. Now we're editing a template of the book. And don't worry that it says this is an object type of template, because template is an object type over here, but it's a template for the type of book. So now it's down here as one of our templates. So don't worry that this doesn't say book. That just means that you're working on a template. Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, we got rid of tag, we moved the book format up and the reading status up, and then we'll drag the number of pages in here, and then let's do something fun. We'll just, make a space and say well, actually, we don't have to, we could say, put the description here, or what we could do is just grab this, take this description relation, this applies to almost everything, they really like having this, I'll drag that out there as well. And then we'll delete this, and we'll put the description right there, and then I'm going to make sure that our layout width is a little wider. And then I'm going to take this guy, because the description is going to be a lot more text. I'm going to drag him, I'm going to pull him over. The number of pages, that's small. Like if we make this 3, well, for some reason the box that you put it in is really big, so like you can't squish it because it puts all the white space here instead of over here, but you know what I mean. You know what's going on here. Number of pages, we'll set that to nothing. Okay, so here's our book template, and let's just automatically select this icon for a book. Now, if we go back, this is one of the 2 templates we have. We've got the blank, and we've got the regular template here. This one says it'll be used by default up here, and that's really annoying, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to set this one as default. And now, when we create a new book, new object, lo and behold, our template is applied. Let's say you don't like this template. When you create it, you have this option up here where it says this type has 2 templates. It might have 5 for all we care, and you can choose the one you want. But I like this one. We set it as the default, so now I can use this for Confessions, book format, paperback, reading status. I've read it. Don't know what the number of pages is. I'll fill this all in later. But hopefully this makes sense as to how to use templates and how to create new objects. So these relations are just data that you might want to put into your object and use in, for example, the template, or just use in the page itself. So now you should be pretty comfortable with playing with different object types and relations. So now let's get into a little more of the nitty-gritty. Real quick, because I'll be using this a decent amount as we progress, down here at these options, of course, you can go back and forwards. You can search for anything that you want. You can click on this graph view, which is pretty cool. I'm not a big graph view person, but sometimes it's helpful, and it'll look a lot cooler as we slowly fill it out. You can also change it to the flow, which kind of shows you links. So if you have a lot of objects linked together, you can see how they link to each other. And then finally, let's go back to the main page. This button right here, when you click on it, it shows you this. Now remember how I told you back in settings, I'm going to hit Command, comma. Down here in preferences, this quick capture menu, this is what is going on with that plus button. So if you had this on hover, then every time you hovered over this, it would come up with that menu. Or if you have it on right click, then if you right click on it, it would come up with that menu. I don't like those options because I like to be able to click it and see these options rather than just clicking this and having it create a new object of whatever type. You can kind of control it, but really it'll just choose like the most recent object type or whatever and automatically make one out of that type. And I don't really like that. So I have it to show up that when you click this, it'll give you an option of all of your object types. And if you have too many of them, you can click this and then you can interact with them here. So that's a way to quick create some notes. Let's create a new page, and we'll say this is our task dashboard. And let's create a new one. This is college, and let's say this one here is finances. Boom. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We've got a lot of pages, and we can't really get to them from this one page. We can search for them down here if we really want to. And we can go up to all objects and scroll over, click on pages, and boom, they're all here. But it's time to talk about how to navigate things and create your own navigation, because so far all we've been doing is searching and clicking and all of this sort of thing. What if you could just make a database, a table that shows you all of your pages? Now this is where sets and collections come in, and similar to object types and object relations, I might confuse some things verbally, so I'm going to try to go slowly and make it pretty clear. Let's bring this out again. Okay, all objects, types. Oh, all right, so you've got sets, you've got collections. A set is a view. Think of it as a view. Don't think of it as a database. It is a way to view your objects in Anytype. And what it does is it searches for them by a specific query. So it's the equivalent of searching something in the search bar and then saving those results or saving that search and putting it somewhere else. So for example, here are the 3 sets that come by default with Anytype. You can see all of your tasks, all of your pages, and all of your media, images, files, etc. I'm going to click on pages. Okay. It's got a description here. We can get rid of that. We don't need that. That is up here, what this description guy does, but I don't really care for that. We'll get rid of that. Okay. So, what are we looking at? This is the object type. Very cool. This is the query. Right now it's looking for all things that are object type of page. If I clear this, it's not going to have anything to search for. No query selected. So on this object type, you can click this and you can say, well, let's say I want to look for books. Very cool. Now we're looking at books. Let's say I want to look for templates. Here's all of the templates. Also very cool. Let's go back to pages. And here's all of our pages. Now, the other thing we can do with sets is search instead of by object type, by any relation. Remember how when I was showing you how to create new relations and I said the top option there was an object. I'll just demo this. I'll go to book, create new relation, dummy relation. Sorry, that's not very nice. And I go over here, object. So this would let me search up any object as a relation. Remember that because when we go to sets, we'll go to pages, object type is just a relation. It's something we can query, similar to how this is an object type of set. So we can make this query any other relation rather than object type. And that's where it gets kind of confusing, because I can query everything that has a number of pages. Now obviously that's just going to be the template for books, see how it says template here, or the books themselves. But let's say I had a PDF and I wanted to put number of pages as a relation. It would also show up here, despite the fact that this is a book, this is a template, and we'd have our PDF here as well. So sometimes it can get a little bit confusing because you'll start looking, instead of at all of the same object types, all of the things that share some relation but aren't the same type. So I like to keep this just as object type for now, and I promise I'll show you how to use it in a more complicated sense later. Let's keep it as page. Very cool. And we'll full screen it because now we're going to start working with it. So all that's happening here is we're querying everything that is an object type of page. Okay, what do we have? We've got the name. It's very straightforward. We can't really edit this because every set has to have it. We can sort them in certain ways, insert right, insert left. There's also this calculate option down at the bottom. And this is for very simple formulas. So for example, I can count how many pages there are. That's cool, there's 4. I don't really need to know that. I can count a percentage of them that are empty. There's none because everything has to have a name, and I can remove that count. Over here we've got the creation date, which is stored on every single note, and you can tell because it's got that lock. So if I go to the task dashboard, I can't delete the creation date. It won't let me. It's impossible. I can delete the description. I can remove it from the object, or I can delete it entirely, but I can't delete it. Just, you know, it's part of the system. We've got the tag. I don't like tags, so I'm going to click on this. I can rename this whatever I want, but it's not going to necessarily be helpful for me, or save, evidently, unless you press enter. I can unlink it from this set if I really want to, but I don't want to do that necessarily because the set is going to be using things that have tags. So instead, I'm just going to hide the relation, and now it's gone. And what this does is it still keeps that relation for all of these things. They all still have a tag, but it's not showing up here anymore. It's not visually here, but it's still right here. It's still linked to the set, so I can turn it on and off on this plus button right here. Okay, so let's now add some different relations to this. Let's go to the task dashboard. What do we have here? We've got the description, we've got the tags. This isn't really a good way to demo this, so let's actually make a new set of books, and then we can start playing with some things. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on set, and we'll call it set of books. Object type, we'll search by book, and boom, there we go. Here's a default object set. Nothing too fancy. Okay. We'll click on this button here, and these are just going to show us all of the relations that are linked to this set. So similarly to how tag was linked to this set back here, now because it's linked to the set, it'll show up right here. So remember, I had the option to unlink it from the set or to hide it. If I unlink it from the set like this, now it's not going to show up here. I'm going to have to add relation, tag, and now it's linked to the set. And even if I remove it, it'll still show up in these options right here. So these options are just all the things that are linked to the set. So over here, for example, I can add a relation, and it's going to automatically put all of my book relations at the top. It's just auto sorting these up here. So let's say reading status, and we'll go book format, and we'll go number of pages. Boom. So we can grab these, we can drag these around, we can put them in different orders, we can make name smaller if we want, we can make it so that, for example, I guess we can't remove the icon. We can remove the icon from a different option, but we can't remove the emoji here. So now what we can do, we've kind of got this information here, is we can start playing around with the filters, the sorts, and the views, and that's over here. So we'll start with filters. You click on these, and you can filter things. So for example, if I only want to see book format, sure, that works. We can change this to any relation that we want, but we'll do book format has any of, so I have to have it in one of these. I have to have it in hardback. Well, only Flight to Eros works. Let's delete that. Let's say I want it in paperback. So I have both of these in paperback, and that's what the has any of means. If I change this to has all of, then, hang on, has all of paperback, then it's only going to be looking for things that contain all of these. So for example, if we go back to, let's go back to has any of, and I'll add hardback as well. Now anything that either is a paperback or a hardback will show up here. But if I want to only show things that are hardback and paperback, it'll be filtering with the has all of. And then there's also has none of, is empty, all of that. So that's how we can make specific filters to look for specific values in our set. And that'll come in handy a little bit later. Let's quickly look at the sort. That's very simple. I don't like their default. Last modified date, no one cares about that. Let's sort by the name. And we'll do name ascending because we're normal. Boom, easy. Now there's going to be the view options, these guys. And you can see the relations that are showed here. These are just all of the the data columns. So for example, we can toggle them on and off, and the relations just show what's being displayed here. The filters and sorts are right here. But what really gets interesting is when we make new views. We can edit some of that stuff from here, like the name and the layout, but I like this view right now, so let's make a new one. We'll click on this. We'll call this View 2 for now. What can we do? Well, we can change the layout. So if we click on this, on the grid, we have the option to show the icon. And this is where I was saying you can remove the emoji if you don't like emojis or you just don't want that there. There's also the gallery view. This is kind of where it gets fun. You can show all this information here. You can change the size of the cards to small, medium, or large. You can make there be a cover. So for example, if I make a cover on here, and we'll just say that's blue, and then if I to RS is whatever color, that's a kind of an ugly color, but now we can choose the cover to be the page cover. And so obviously if this was like a beautiful image or something, it would show up here instead. We'll keep that at none. Fit media, that's so when you have a cover, let's say your cover is like a movie poster or a book cover, fit media turned off would make it really wide and it would just show you like a cross section. Fit media turned on would would put it completely in frame. So you could see the entire poster top to bottom here, but you probably have white space on either side. Show icon, again, we can show the emoji, and the number of these on the page, we can go up to 120. I don't think we're getting there anytime soon. Okay. The list option is very similar to the grid view, except there's no lines and there's no headings. So here we've got the lines, it says name, book format, all that. Here, it doesn't. It just shows us all the information kind of listed out for us. And on this one, we don't have a lot of options. We can just show the icon. Now, just a quick aside, if you're following closely, this is where this relation option comes in handy. Because remember, if we're here and I want to add a new column to the table, I could just click on this and search for whatever I want, right? Pretty simple. But when it's a list view, you can't do that. There's no plus button here. There's no way to add more data to these. So that's why these relations are handy, because this is where you could add things that you want. So let's say number of pages wasn't here. Again, there's nowhere for me to click to add that. But if I go here to relations, now I can turn on the number of pages and show that here. So that's how you can edit the relations if you don't have that option in the current view. What are some of the other options? Kanban, this is pretty handy. It's got everything normal except for the group by. And this is where you can choose which of the relations that you have you want to group your columns by. So for example, I can group them all by the reading status. These are the ones that have been read. These are the ones I'm reading, and you can reorder these if you want. So unread, reading, read, that sort of thing. Or I could group them by let's see. Well, I can turn off no value as well, actually. So this is the other option. So in layout, you can change the group by, and then if you go back, you can also just change what the groups are. I don't want the no value because it has to be, I can't have a book that I've never read, but I'm also not reading, but I also have read it. That just doesn't make any sense. So you can change what groups are shown here. You can change what the group by option is here. And of course, if I had more relations that were select or multi-select, I could change that right here. I can color the columns if I want to. That's pretty cool. And then, of course, I believe you can change that. Just smack that up here. This one could be purple for all we want, that sort of thing. Okay. Show icon, we've played with that before. Page limit, we already know what that does. Calendar view. This one is kind of controversial because Notion's trying to make a calendar. Everybody wants to make a calendar. It's the hot new thing. And Anytype added a calendar, and it's okay. So clearly from what you can see, these are on the same date, and that's because we're currently looking at the calendar based off of their last modified date. We can change this to creation date or last open date. It doesn't matter because they were all made and opened on the same day. Now, this can be handy. For example, let's say you had a bunch of your tasks and you had a relation on task that was like the date that it's due. And you could go in here and you could change the date relation to like the due date, and then they would spread out based off the date that they're due. So sometimes this can be useful, but for something like books, it clearly doesn't make a lot of sense unless you wanted to have, for example, a relation that was, this is the date that I bought the book, or this is the date that I finished the book. And then you could view that based off of that. So calendar can be useful, but I personally find that it's just really not as good as you think it is. And then there's the graph. The graph is kind of odd. It has a lot of settings right here. You can show titles, you can show arrows, you can do all sorts of things. And what it would display is links between objects, which we'll get to when we talk about the slash commands. But if, for example, Flight to Eris was linked to Confessions, I'm talking about this and I'm saying this reminds me of Confessions, and I make a link, they would show up here. The graph, again, it's kind of cool, but I just don't really find myself using it a lot. I would suggest you stick mainly with grid for the data that you want, gallery for like beautiful interactions, and Kanban, that's pretty useful, Kanban, however you want to call it. So that's how sets work. Let's briefly talk about collections. Now, if you go to the graph view, you can see that our set of books is here, but our actual books like Confessions and Flight to Eris is right here. They're not linked to the set of books, and that's because this isn't actually linking to them. I mean, obviously if I click this and I click that, then we get Flight to Eris, but this is simply querying all of the books that I have in my vault, but it's not linking to them. It's not creating any specific linkage or connection between them, and that's what collections do. So if a set is just searching based off of a query, like the book type, the object type is book, a collection is more like a folder that you can choose to put things in. Let me give you an example. We'll create a new collection, and we'll call it, yes, create an object in the collection, gotcha, yeah. We'll call this one, let's say, my library. So you can create objects in here. This is going to be test object, and obviously it's going to set that to page as the default, and you can actually control this over here with this button. This little drop down, you can choose what the default object type is for this. So if I wanted it to default to book, and now I can also select which template I want it to default use. Let's say that. Boom, now every time I make a new object, it's inherently a book, and you can see that popping up here. Of course I can go in and change these. If I want to change it, I would have to actually go into the object and then change it. But c'est la vie. This is where you can select which object type is by default put into this collection and what template it uses. Now, if we go to the graph view, you can see all of these things are linking to this collection because this is more of like a central node that all of these are connected by. This book, this untitled book, book 1, has nothing to do with book 2. I mean, sure, they're all books, but all of our pages, for example, finances and task dashboard, they aren't linked just because they're the same, because they're both pages. So our books aren't linking because they're both books, so they wouldn't link to the set, but they're linking to the library because they're both in my library. So that's kind of cool, but what if, I own Confessions, right? How do I make it so that this book links to my library? I can't just add Confessions in here because it's clearly not the same book. But what we can do is go into Confessions, open this right here, these 3 dots, and this is where a lot of the info is. You can add it to favorites, lock, and all of this. But we can add it to the collection right here. So down here in these options, add to collection, my library. Now, not only does it say that it has a new backlink because it's being linked to my library, it also shows up in the library. One of these is right. Yeah, I'm going to delete this one because these are the same title. We'll just call this one Confessions 2, the much acclaimed sequel. So here's Confessions. Now it's showing up in the library, and it is linked to this collection. So that might be a little confusing, but the basic idea is that sets are queries based off of a criteria. Show me everything that has an object type of book. Show me everything that has a relation of created date, that's today or something. Collections are more like folders. You choose what you put in them, and they don't necessarily contain all things that are the same. So for example, we've seen we can put pages, we can put this note in here and this page in here, even though they're not the same object whatsoever. Now the only thing to be aware of with collections is that if I go here and I add a new relation, like there's a lot of books in here. Let's put the book format here. Well, now this page has the relation book format, or it will the instant I choose what it is. It's a hardback. Cool. Go in here. Now it's a hardback, even though it's a page. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So just be wary when you're playing with collections, because if you start adding a bunch of relations to try to categorize the data, you might end up giving your note the paperback tag, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? Because maybe it does if you're writing it on paper, but you know what I mean. You can combine anything into a collection, but that doesn't always mean you should. So use it with discretion, use it wisely, and a lot of the times sets are really going to be what you want instead of collections. Okay, now that we've gone over the object types, the relations, the sets, collections, everything, now we can finally talk about the slash commands. It looks pretty basic from the beginning. You can slash command to almost anything you want in terms of the text formatting. Remember, we can make it a title, we can make it a subheading, we can do whatever we want to it from here. But you can also do a lot more. First of all, you can link specific files, images, that sort of thing. And this is useful because it'll make a little drag and drop box, and then I can move this around however I want. So I don't actually have to fill it in right now, but if I want to have this, for example, on a template, and I can say like, put the syllabus here. I misspelled that. Oh dear. I am smart, I promise you. Yeah, then you know, you can kind of have this drag and drop box. So that's what all of the media options do: files, PDFs, bookmarks, that sort of thing. There's some embeds for LaTeX, for Mermaid, YouTube embeds, Miro, Figma, all the things you can think of. Here's some fun formatting options. There's a line divider, and you can also get this just by typing 3 slashes together and then pressing enter. And these are just kind of pretty if you want to, you know, format everything really nicely. There should also be down here a dot divider, and I kind of like these as well. They're more, you know, literary style, but they're pretty cool, and you can play around with them if you want, that sort of thing. There's also going to be a table of contents. So right now we have nothing because we have no headings, but let's say we do a heading title, and then we do a subheading, smaller title. Boom. Now we've got our table of contents, so we could put this up here at the top. And then when you click on these, of course, it'll kind of scroll you down to wherever those things are. What else do we have? Well, we're going to have, we can do basic tables here as well. So if you just want to have something like this, you know, there's no automations or anything you could run with it, but if you just want a nice little table, that of course exists. And then here we get to the fun part. And this is where we can play with inline sets and inline collections. And this is why I waited this long to show you this. Inline collection, inline set. Now, an inline collection or inline set means that it's going to show you a view of that collection in this page. So if I click on this, it will ask me to choose the set I want. Let's say pages. Boom, it's right here. If I click on this, open source set, now it will take us to the actual set itself. Back on our welcome page, it's just kind of embedded in this view. And the same with collections. We do /inline collection. I'm going to choose my library because that's all we have. Boom, it's right here. You can click on this to open the source collection, but this is just a small view of it here. Now there's something to note when you're doing this, when you're putting inline sets and collections in here, and it has to do with views. So let's search up the pages set. Boom, it's right there. And let's say I want to add a new view. I'm going to call this the best view. We're going to add a filter to it, and we're going to filter everything by, well, let's actually add tags to them just for demo. We'll say this is good, and this one's also good, and this one's also good, and then this one's bad. Please, let's make this a different color. Bad. Boom. So now I've got good and bad sitting here, and of course it's being sorted by the last modified date. We're going to make it alphabetized, so it's going to sort by name ascending. Cool. So we've got good and bad. In the best view, let's filter it to only show us tags that have any of good, because we only want to see the good ones. Cool. So now we've got this view. If we go back over to welcome and we do an inline set, and we'll say pages, it's going to have all of our views. So it took a little bit, had some troubleshooting there, and I've been running Anytype for a really long time, so it might be kind of getting tired. But here we have all of our views. We've got all, we've got calendar, we've got the best view. But let's say we make the bad view, and we're going to add a filter to this one that the tag has any of bad. Boom. So now I've got the best view and the bad view. So this makes sense, right? We're filtering out the good tags and the bad tags. Now if we go to this source set, we'll see that the bad view isn't here. And this is something that really frustrates me, and I really wish they would change. But if you make modifications in an inline set, they're stuck in this view. Sometimes this is really helpful. For example, take a collection or a set of all of my tasks, right? Let's say I have a college dashboard for like my history class, and I put an inline view here, and I filter all of them out, so I only see the ones that are tagged as my history assignments. Well, that's great, because then when I go to the actual set, I don't just see my history assignments, I see all of my assignments. But this is also really frustrating, because if I really like this on my homepage, and I do good work to set it all up here, and then I end up going to the source set, and it's not even there, that can be really frustrating. So my best advice to you is if you really like a specific view of a set, go and design it on the source set, because that's the view that's going to be imported when you put this inline into your document. Because remember, the best view got brought in with the set. So when I did, a /inline set pages, it has the best view in here because that's part of the source set, the original one that we had. But the bad view, this is only being stored on this page. So it's really important that if you like a view, you like a filter, whatever, you make sure that that is stored to the source set and it's not just being kept on a random page. Okay, that's almost everything you need to know about sets and collections. So now let's quickly jump through a couple closing remarks and different little tips and tricks you can use to really customize your Anytype experience. To finish up with the slash commands, there's a couple more options we have. We've got our inline sets and collections. We can add links to other objects. So this is where, for example, we can link to a new object, something like confessions. And that link, of course, will show up on the graph. Here's our homepage, and here's confessions right here. And if you don't want this to show up as a card, you can always click on the three dots and then change the preview to a text instead. If you don't like the way something looks, I probably can't cover all of it in this video, but there's so many options for how you can view it. So just always click on those three dots and go looking for, make the icon small, make the icon big, don't have the icon at all, put the cover on there, don't put the, all of these options are here. So just go looking. Usually the three dots are where you want to go. Also in the slash command, we go down here, is the add file. So this is where you can link specifically to a file instead of just any other page. This only filters it by images, PDFs, what have you. A date, you can link to a specific date if you'd like. I don't know why you would, but you can if you want to. And then these are just linking to specific object types. So you can create, a new note with no title, a blank canvas, I think they mean a page here, a blank page with a title, that sort of thing. These are just for quick inserting. So let's say I want to make a subpage, it automatically pulls this up for me. So that's just a way to kind of be editing tasks really quickly. If I do slash page, it's gonna make a new page, and this is our new page. Boom. We exit out of this, new page already exists. So this is just a faster way to edit with the slash command. There's really no need to. You can obviously just make your new page and then insert a link into the other one. But this is a pretty fast way if you want to add more pages. What else is in the slash command that I can show you? And then relations. This is pretty fun. Remember how we could drag and drop relations from over here? So I can bring the tag over down here. I can also just go down here and go slash tag, and then the relation is right there. So the slash command is really just a way to speed up the processes. There's nothing in the slash command, or mostly nothing, that can't be done another way. Now, finally, let's say you have a big block of text, like lorem ipsum, whatever they say, and you want to mention something, confessions. You can use the @ symbol to put an inline reference into that text. So confessions, good book. Here's some more Latin, whatever. And this is very different than just saying slash confessions. Well, that's not even going to show it. Slash book, because now that makes it a new card. You can't put this in line, if that makes sense. So even though you kind of reference something in your text right here with the @ symbol, you can't necessarily do that with the slash. So the @ symbol can be used if you want to have a big paragraph and start linking out different ideas. And finally, this is a good way to show you on the graph, you've got all these links. This is also what the flow is for, just showing, well, this links out to a new book and to confessions. Confessions doesn't link to a lot, but it's part of the homepage and it's part of this collection of my library. So you can kind of explore your connections through that flow view, and that's where all these links come from. All right, let's close this out with some inspiration. Clearly, I've created a work of beauty right here, and everybody will want to make their vault look exactly like mine. But just in case you're wrong and you don't, let's go over here to Spaces and Widgets, and let's click on the gallery view. This is going to show you a lot of different Anytype spaces that different people have made. A lot of them will be made by Charlotte, because she works for Anytype, but some people will upload their own, and you can kind of filter them. You can look for the featured ones. You can look for the ones made by Anytype themselves or not, but you can really just look around here and see different things that people have designed. And sometimes it can be really, really impressive. You've got this person's got their movie database here. This person's got a project management, that sort of thing, a study hub. So these are just kind of inspirations to show you. For example, you click on it, you can just go here and install it into a new space, and then pop on up, and eventually it'll load everything into here. Wow, yep, there we go. It's cooking. Here we go. So now if you want to try this, you can just kind of poke around. You can see What kind of objects do they have? Well, that's a lot of objects, actually. What kind of relations do they have? Also a lot. And just kind of look, see what they've got built here, see how everything links together, and just use this as an inspiration to really see what is out there. Because, with apps like Anytype, with things like Notion and Obsidian, it's really hard to get it to work until you at least know what it can do. And I can show you a lot of your options, but I can't really inspire you to make something on your own. Like this guy, he made an F1 tracker, and that's pretty cool. You can see the different circuits. Let's install this one. Let's try this one out. So just feel free to experiment. Feel free to go play with Anytype and really see what there is here to look at. Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, there's all this information here. There's all these different ways that they've laid out their pages, their links, their format, that sort of thing. So I really just want to inspire you at the end of the day to try something new, design something for yourself, make something you're really happy with. That's really the point of Anytype, is to make your own workspace. And I hope you really enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy also looking around the gallery and just seeing what there is. So that's everything I have to tell you about Anytype. There's probably little bits and pieces you'll find that I've forgotten throughout this video, but I really hope it was helpful, that you appreciated it. And it took me a lot of time to put this together, to design, to script it, to film it, all of that. So it would mean a lot to me if you could give a like or a comment or a subscription or just about anything. I'm just here to try to help people use this application. I don't think it's the perfect application, but I think it's pretty good, and I really want people to understand how to use it better. So hopefully there was something in this guide that you found useful. Send it to your friends. Let me know what you thought of it. And again, subscribe if you want to see more Anytype or non-Anytype content. I'll be branching out a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for stopping by.